It was one thing to say he had to learn about the skull, and quite another thing to do it. Aside from taking it out of the closet again and looking at it, which he did on Saturday morning, turning it over and over, there didn't seem to be a way to know anything. On closer examination, in good light, the skull proved to have all good teeth. No cavities, at least in the upper teeth. He didn't have the lower jaw or teeth. "Does that mean anything?" he said aloud in his room. It was early on Saturday morning, and his mother was gone off on some trip with Bill. They were growing closer, and Brennan was happy for her, although it had happened many times before, getting this close. It could mean he was young. There it was again, he. Why did he think the skull was male? No, why did he know the skull was male? Because he knew it, was certain of it, and without any reason. From the side he could see the damage done by the bullet. The entry hole in the forehead was a little over 1/2 inch in diameter, and almost perfectly round. But a piece of bone as big as the palm of his hand was missing at the back, broken out in a rough oval. God, how must that have been, he thought. How could that be? To have an explosion and then a bullet slam through your head that way and carry away the back of your skull and all the things you are, all the things you were or are or ever will be are gone then, blown away. He shook his head. He was squinting, feeling the pain, and he tried to think of something else but could not. He stood, turned away from the skull, looked out the window and broke it then, broke the train of thought. A week. I've had the skull a week and a day, and I'm going crazy. What have I done? He wrapped the skull up again and put it in the closet. I'll do it now, he thought. I'll call the police. But he didn't. Couldn't. Instead, he found himself putting on his running shoes and shorts and a T-shirt and heading out into the cool Saturday morning air. He set an easy lope away from the house, not meaning to head in any direction. But in a block he turned left and started the long road that went up and around the side of the mountain overlooking El Paso. There was almost no traffic yet, no distractions, and he gave himself to running, did not think, but increased the pace until he was driving up the mountain road, his legs pumping. In moments the work made him sweat, and he pulled his T-shirt off, still running, and rolled it and tied it around his forehead to keep the sweat from his eyes. Running hard now, pushing himself, deep breaths, deep and down his legs, nodding and bunching and taking him up the steep road, his shoes slamming on the road, no thoughts, a blank. And the name Holmesley came in. Perfect, he thought. Holmesley. Maybe he'll know what to do. John Holmesley was a biology teacher in Cardiff School. Brennan had taken biology from him the year before, and an almost friendship had developed. Well, Brennan thought, jogging down the street that led to Holmesley's house, cooling from his run. It hadn't started that way. Brennan had nearly flunked, had trouble in school, and Holmesley had stopped him in front of the school one day as he was heading home at the end of the day. He was an enormous man, tall and very heavy, bordering on fat, but in a controlled way, like a bear. He had rounded shoulders that somehow looked massively strong, with a heavy head of dark curly hair that always seemed a little long, and a neatly trimmed beard filled with gray streaks. "Did you know," he had said to Brennan, standing in the sun and grass in front of the school, "that the beetles are the most numerous species on Earth?" "What?" Brennan had been in a hurry and was slightly annoyed at the delay. "Beetles. They're the most numerous species of life on Earth. Do you suppose that means God made the earth for beetles?" "I beg your pardon?" Brennan was confused. He had taken biology, but Holmesley hadn't said 4 words to him. As in most of his classes, Brennan had taken a desk in the back of the room and spent much of his time trying to be ignored. And now this teacher had stopped him on the school lawn and was talking to him. "I said beetles are the most numerous species on Earth. So do you suppose that means God made the earth just for beetles, that beetles are God's favorite thing?" "I don't know," Brennan said, and thought, God, I sound dumb. Maybe I am dumb. I guess so. Aren't you curious about them? Well, I don't know. I guess so. Yes, I guess I am curious about beetles. The sun was on him, and he had to squint to look up at Holmesley. Good, let's find one. What? Help me find a beetle. There's probably one within 5 feet of where we're standing. And he put a pair of reading glasses on, which made his face look round and almost clown-like, dropped to his hands and knees, and started looking through the grass, moving blades of grass sideways with his fingers. Brennan stared at him. "Come on," Holmesley looked up. "Give me a hand. It's easier with 2 looking." And still Brennan hesitated. Then he thought, "Oh well, maybe it will help my grade." And he dropped to his knees and started looking through the grass with Holmesley. And he saw one. A black bug almost an inch long, a shiny black beetle. "I found one." "What does it look like?" Holmesley asked. "It's black and shiny and about an inch long." Brennan put his finger down and poked the beetle. It raised its hind end. He poked it again. "It's probably a blister beetle. Don't touch it." But it was too late. The beetle emitted a squirt of some kind of fluid from beneath its rear end and squirted it on Brennan's finger. Instantly there was a sharp, burning sensation, a quick sting. "Ow!" "Exactly. They have a defense mechanism that's pretty effective. You'll hurt there for a while and might get a blister, but you'll be all right." Brennan shook his hand. The spot on his finger hurt like a sting. "Oh yes, beetles are fascinating. A person could spend his whole life just studying them. Just beetles." He sat up, looking straight into Brennan's eyes, his face serious. "I can't believe you don't want to know things." "But well, I do." "You don't seem to want to know biology." "That's different. I'm just not good at it." "Nonsense. You found the beetle, didn't you?" "But that's not the same." "But it is. Exactly. That's what studying biology, or anything else for that matter, is all about. Just finding things. Do me a favor, will you? Every day bring me a different kind of beetle." "What?" "Bring me a new beetle each day and we'll learn about them. Together." And a sort of friendship had developed. Brennan had done as Holmesley had asked and brought a beetle, a different kind of beetle each day, and they would look it up, study the characteristics, and talk about them. And Brennan passed biology. Holmesley had been as good as his word. But a strange thing had happened. Somehow working with Holmesley had bled over into other parts of school. It wasn't that he enjoyed school. He wouldn't go that far. But he studied. His habits changed, and he studied almost by instinct, almost naturally, which just as naturally brought his grades up, which made his mother happy, which made him happy, which made it still easier to live, to study, to learn. All because of Holmesley and his beetles. But perhaps more important, Holmesley had shown him other things as well, other than biology. He had invited Brennan to his home one weekend, where he lived with a wife named Tricia, who was almost as small as he was large. He had taken Brennan into the basement, where Brennan had expected to find jars of bugs or plants or fetal pigs floating in preservatives. Instead, it looked like the interior of a space vehicle. Every corner, every wall was filled with electronic equipment. "What?" Brennan stopped just inside the room. "Music," Holmesley said. "Music?" Holmesley had nodded. "Trish and I love to listen to music. We can't watch television. It's too slow for us, so we listen to music." There was an overstuffed couch in the middle of the room, and at each end a floor lamp stood. "You mean you just come down here and sit and listen to music?" Brennan asked. Holmesley had nodded. "Sometimes we read, but usually we just listen." "And all of this is just for music?" Another nod. "Of course, a lot of it is speakers. Would you like to try it?" "I sure would." "Sit on the couch in the middle and lean back. I'll play Mahler's Resurrection Symphony for you." Brennan thought of asking for some Pink Floyd or Creedence Clearwater, but decided Holmesley probably didn't have them. He sat and listened. And it was more than just hearing the music. At first the strains of Mahler sounded soft to him, and he thought he would be bored, which was what usually happened when he listened to classical music. But the system, the speakers made the sound so pure somehow, so rich and pure that the music went past just hearing, past listening. The music went into him. It was incredible. When the music was finished, he looked around the room expecting something, the whole world, to have changed. Holmesley had left as the symphony began, and he came in holding a can of soda. "Like it?" Brennan felt like whispering, "I didn't know. You know, I didn't have any idea music could be that way." And so Brennan had learned about Beatles and about music that year. Through the spring he went several times to the Holmesleys' house and listened to music, talked about music, about biology, about nothing and everything, and learned most about himself. When summer arrived he went to work for Stoney and had not spent much time with Holmesley. He had been working too hard. But the friendship was still there, and now the feeling that Holmesley was perhaps the only person who could help him with this skull business. That's how he thought of it now, this skull business. No sleep, dreams he couldn't begin to understand, thoughts, voices through his brain that made no sense, his whole life upside down. This skull business. He jogged now to cool a bit, coming off the run as he neared Holmesley's house. Holmesley could help. He hoped.